Welcome, fellow Stardust. Are you ready for a scare? I am so excited to finally see Orphan First Kill. We have been waiting for so long, Stardust. Yes, I could have watched this at home as well, but I really wanted the theater experience for the prequel to one of my favorite movies, Orphan. And I did a review last year on that movie, as well as an episode of True Crime and Nails featuring Barbora Skorlova, the woman who inspired the character for Esther. I'm certainly not expecting Orphan First Kill to be as good as Orphan, but I'm hoping to walk away with at least having enjoyed the movie. This time we have a new director, William Brent Bell, which had me kind of worried because I've mostly heard negative things about his previous work, which I haven't seen yet. The director of Orphan, Jaume Collet Serra, also directed the remake of House of Wax, which was his first film, and I also enjoyed his movie that he produced called Curve, which will probably end up on my next video of underrated movies. And with how much I loved Orphan, it would have been cool to see him come back. But despite what I've heard about William Brent Bell, I'm willing to give him a chance and see what he can do with this installment. And it's so cool to see Isabelle Fuhrman coming back to reprise her role as Esther. Having her and Julia Stiles on screen just has to be good. Alright, well, I'm getting super excited talking about this, so let's head on over to the theater. Well, Stardust, I must say, I liked it. Now, it's not a perfect film, but I walked away fulfilled. I was worried at first in the first 10 minutes of the movie because of the first kill, but the rest of the movie made up for it. Although there were small things like that kind of happened throughout the movie too, which is why it's not a perfect film. Now, in talking about this prequel, I will be spoiling the first movie, so if you haven't seen it, please keep that in mind. Now, it might seem like when I'm telling you a little bit about the plot that I'm giving away a lot, but what we're watching in the first part of the movie is what's told to us in the first film. And now we get the treat of watching it being played out. But I will get into some spoilers at this timestamp because there are some things that I want to talk about. So Orphan came out in 2009, and that's when the movie took place. And we start now with this film in 2007 at the Starn Institute, where Via Farmiga's character finds out Esther actually came from before she adopted her from the orphanage. And as told to us in the first movie, she escapes the Starn Institute and ends up with a family who believes that she is their missing daughter. And when she makes it into the family's home, things get a bit creepy, just like in the first movie. In fact, there are so many similarities between these two movies. It's almost like they remade the first movie, but added a couple of new elements, even though it was supposed to be more of an origin story. They even hit some of the same beats throughout the movie. And we also get a huge twist, which I was not expecting. Orphan gave us a twist that nobody saw coming. Some claim they did. I didn't. And so it was really gratifying when we got another one, and I just did not expect it. It's also revealed about halfway through the movie, so we get about half of the second act and a whole third act go down with this new information. Some of the beats that are pretty similar are things like when we have the nun in the first film investigating Esther's background for the Colemans. We also have a person like this in our detective character who poses a similar threat to Esther. We've also got Esther's welcome home, which was very similar to the first movie, as well as the end, and just really throughout the movie there were just so many beats that felt familiar. To talk a little bit more about some more of the similarities, we have this inclusion of a rodent. And actually in the first film, it was a guinea pig. In the original script for Orphan, they had her actually harming this guinea pig, but took it out for the production of the film. And so it's interesting to see that this time around, we actually have a rat this time who she's more compassionate towards and ends up using as sort of a weapon against one of her enemies. Another similarity is that we've got another family who's affluent and cultured in the arts. They've got everything at their fingertips, and they're praised by everyone around them, which I think was a good choice instead of having her go to some middle class family or less and have her go back home to them and having this whole new environment, because the environment and atmosphere in the first movie is part of its appeal. It's a classic feel that just feels pristine and put together and perfect, but it's paired with the sinister actions of Esther. We also get another bratty brother, but this time he's a bit older, and we'll talk more about him in the spoiler section. We also have a family who has recently suffered through a traumatic event, and this is what Esther is able to use in order to benefit her. Another similarity that's actually an opposite are the father roles. In the first one, pretty much everyone is frustrated with that character and hates him. And in this one, we actually care for the father and really sympathize with him. This time, the dad was played by Rossif Sutherland, who did an amazing job. The entire cast was excellent in this one. We also had Matthew Finlan, who is a fairly new actor, along with Iro Kanagawa, who played the detective. And as predicted, Julia Stiles and Isabel Fuhrman were a delight on screen together. And like the first movie, the producers list was very long, but this time it did not include Leonardo DiCaprio. But they did add Isabel Fuhrman to the list, as well as Alex Mace, who created the character Esther, as well as the writer of the first film, David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, as well as a new member of the writing team, David Coggeshall. Along with the producing credit, Isabel Fuhrman actually was involved a little bit in the writing, but she wasn't credited for that. Also, what's cool about her behind the scenes involvement with the movie is the fact that she actually reached out to the writer of the first film, David, after being bombarded with a bunch of emails about how the movie was so similar to this case that started becoming popular back in 2014, a story involving a young girl named Natalie Grace. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Esther was inspired by Barbora Skorlova, and in doing my research on Barbora for my True Crime and Nails video, I also came across Natalie Grace, who was adopted by the Barnetts. The Barnetts then decided to abandon her, claiming that she was actually a grown woman who was conning them. And as I was watching videos and reading about this, I was pretty stumped as to whether or not this girl was a woman or not. But it was finally revealed in 2019 that the Barnetts actually confessed to being inspired by the movie Orphan to pull this con. And so when Isabel got all these people telling her that her movie is just like this story, it's no wonder. And so when she reached out to David to talk about maybe another movie, he said that they had actually already started writing a new script. And then she just became more involved in developing the characters some more, as well as adding to the story. And so they're all saying that if this film does well, that they'll be giving us a third film, which I completely welcome. And so now I'm totally excited to check out more of William Brent Bell's work. One of the things that I didn't appreciate though was this really severe glow effect with the cinematography. I don't know if they were trying to fix something or what, but it was just super blurry for a lot of the film, mostly in the start of the film, and it kind of evens out a little bit, but it's still just pretty glowy, which I didn't really appreciate. But I did appreciate how this movie just really pulled different elements from the first film that we really loved, but then still added its own elements to almost make it a standalone film. It of course would be a better viewing experience to watch the first movie first and then this prequel, but you really don't have to. And Esther is just as sinister and as fun. It was really cool to see how they, used force perspective and child stand-ins to kind of trick our eye a bit. Even though, yes, with some close-ups, it's pretty obvious that she doesn't look like a 9-year-old girl this time around. But I was able to let that go and just go with the flow. But it was pretty funny when we see these child stand-ins, we're literally only seeing their back. There's maybe 1 or 2 times where we see Esther turn her head to the camera while seeing her full body. So I'm wondering how they pulled that off, since they say they didn't use CGI. But yeah, it was just something that kind of stood out in my brain sometimes. It was a bit distracting, but it didn't necessarily bother me because I was just happy to have Isabel Fuhrman back instead of a new actor. The movie is 1 hour and 39 minutes long, and we get so much story in that short amount of time. It doesn't feel long or anything like that, but we're just getting a lot of information and I'm just eating it up as we go. Okay, y'all, I have to talk about this twist. So, spoilers are ahead. Y'all, here is another twist I did not see coming. Julia Stiles is also a murderer. This movie becomes something completely different when we find out that Julia Stiles actually faked her daughter's disappearance because her son had accidentally killed her when they were fighting too roughly or whatever. And she's kept this from her husband, who is hopeful that she'll still one day return. So when Esther shows up, Julia Stiles' character is confused, but she goes along with it because she's still trying to cover up her tracks. And this is also why the brother is bratty towards her, because he's like, this is some shit. And of course we have the father, who is just so grateful to have his daughter back, and it's kind of brought him back to life. Just like having Esther be adopted by the Colemans kind of reignited the love between the Colemans. We have that same thing going on with this new couple, and Julia Stiles just kind of taking advantage of that. And a sociopathic Julia Stiles is a fun one. Not only do we have the horrors of Esther and what she does, but also the horrors of corruption and what money can do to people. Money and power can really make a evil. And here are a couple of my negatives for the movie, which brought it down a couple of notches from the first one. The first thing that bugged me that I sort of mentioned at the start of the video was the first kill. It was just a little too far-fetched. It should have just been a quick stabbing, because it was kind of hard to believe that a small girl like Esther, or a small grown woman like Esther, would have the strength to bash his head in without him being able to retaliate. Also, when we're introduced to Julia Stiles' character, she's got a bow in her hair and also on her shirt. And I just thought that was a bit too on the nose, because we have Esther, who likes to wear bows. But when I think about it more, I see them maybe trying to trick the audience a bit, because before it's revealed that Julia Stiles is actually lying as well, we're made to think that she's actually going to be happy to have her child home. And so if she's got bows in her hair and on her clothing, it would make sense that she would believe that this girl is her daughter. Or even if she really didn't believe that that was her daughter, she still accepted her because she wanted to have that person in her life again. But then when it is revealed that Julia Stiles' character is lying, it's like, well, that was maybe too coincidental that they both had bows in their hairs and like to look delicate that way. We also have a moment where Esther follows the detective to his house, and I don't know if I missed something, but I'm just not sure how she would have made it to his house unless she hopped in his car, but I don't recall that. Also, at the end, we get the dad who arrives at the climax of it all, but it seems like he arrived too soon. Like, how did he get there so quickly? And also with the ending, the house goes up in flames, which I love, and it's the building that's aflame in the painting in the first film, which I thought was the Sarin Institute, but instead it looks like it was this house, or has been changed to be this house. But the house goes aflame, and Esther goes back up to her room to get cleaned up of all her blood that's all over her, and then comes downstairs with no struggle. There's no coughing. She's not, affected by the heat of the flames whatsoever. It just was super silly. So I was just like, oh, y'all could have just had the fire be smaller or lesser, or have it be one part of the house or something. But it's just pretty stupid that she's walking through a house that is on fire without any struggle. But it looked cool, and you know, it was kind of metaphorical, and it was just about maybe the visuals, I guess. But when it's a movie and story set in reality, you know, you messed it up for us there a little bit. But I'll take the visuals and you know, its meaning, and I'll run with it. But overall, I'm happy about this movie. It was a great addition to the story, and I'm excited for a third one if they do decide to do it. Orphan First Kill would probably get somewhere between a 3.5 and 4. Once I decide, I'll go ahead and rate it on Letterboxd, which you can find the link for down in the description. Also, if you want to be a patron and receive extra content as well as participate in monthly movie nights, I'll leave the link for that down in the description as well. Well, thank you for joining me today, fellow Stardust. I appreciate you being here with me. I'll be back next week with my subscriber request of Cloverfield Killer, requested by Fever Dreamland Theater. So if you haven't already, go ahead and hop on the Rainbow Fright Freight Train and hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell. That way you'll get notified every time I upload a new video. And if you like this video, please hit the like button and share it with a friend. I hope I see you next time. Peace.